Dr. Gates, in your speech on budget austerity at the Eisenhower Library, you said that, quote, Eisenhower was wary of seeing his beloved republic turn into a muscle-bound garrison state, militarily strong, but economically stagnant and strategically insolvent, unquote. As you've heard, we've got a lot of very difficult appropriations challenges coming up in the next few months. And I wanted to ask you if you have any opinions as to what Eisenhower might think of the proposal to use the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund, i.e. the War Fund, to cover base-level DoD budget items, or whether you might have some thoughts on that.
Well, I think I expressed my view that these kinds of ad hoc arrangements are never at all as satisfying or as cost-effective as regular order business, in which choices are made and decisions are made based on those choices and dollars allocated. And there may be more dollars, there may be fewer dollars, but at least people have some predictability. And I would also tell you that having some predictability year on year would be helpful. And so I think that obviously regular order business in terms of managing these budgets, that's really what I was talking about in a good part of my remarks. Having regular appropriated defense budgets that actually begin at the beginning of the fiscal year is the way things ought to work, and they have not worked that way up here for at least 10 years. That needs to be fixed. By the same token, as I said, when I was the secretary, if I were confronted with the situation that I face now, my sense would be to take the money, because what's my alternative? And what kinds of programs am I going to have to cut in order to accommodate certain defense needs? Let me give you an example of a place where I made a big mistake. In 2010, this committee and others were very unhappy about supplementals and talking about moving away from supplementals. And I knew that when the wars were over, those supplementals, or now the OCOs, would go away. A lot of the funding that we had for military families and for families of wounded warriors and wounded warriors were being funded through the supplementals. I moved all those programs, or as many of those programs as I could, into the base budget in the belief we would need those programs for years and years and years to come. Well, guess what? All of those programs are now being hit by sequestration and by continuing resolutions and everything else. So what I thought would protect those programs ended up making them vulnerable, whereas if I'd have left them in the OCOs, they'd still be fully funded. So those are the perverse consequences of not having regular appropriations bills. I would make one other observation about Eisenhower and his military-industrial complex speech. It gets quoted a lot, but there's one factoid that people don't usually include. When Eisenhower made that speech in 1961, the defense budget accounted for 51% of federal spending. Today it's 15%.